It's already 3 and we agreed that we are going to be meeting here at Vital Animal Health page. My name is Dr. Kibet Chirchir, and today we are going to be talking about a very interesting topic, that is how to achieve and maintain higher milk production after calving. And I think the most important thing for me to discuss today is how do we really ensure that we get a higher milk production. And I think a very good approach is to look at just after calving, what do your animals really require. And I think based on the fact that the cow is lactating, it's important for you to note that the animal requires energy for milk production, for maintenance, for maybe if it's losing energy, it will require energy to cover up for that, and also some energy maybe for some activity and all that. So all the nutrients which are required at this time actually need to meet that demand. And if you are not providing at the levels which are required, then the animal is going to suffer some deficiency. And I think critical at this point in time is the understanding that if you are not going to meet the energy requirement for these cows, then they are going to go into what we call a negative energy balance. And what we mean is that the animal has a demand to maintain the milk production. There is some level of energy which you need for every liter of milk the cow is going to be producing. There is energy for maintenance, and as I said, there will also be energy which will be required for any other activity which the cow is going to be undergoing. So this energy is going to be variable, and in the event that you are not able to supply some adequate amount of energy in the diet, then the animal is going to have a reduction in milk production. So really what is causing a depression in milk production right after calving is actually negative energy balance, and I think that is what I'm going to be discussing today. And we are going to be looking at how we are going to ensure that we provide sufficient nutrients to your cow so that it doesn't reduce the milk it is producing and it's able to maintain a high amount and also be able to get to the peak production as quickly as possible. So if we are thinking about that, so when does negative energy balance occur in cows? And it's important for you to note that even 2 weeks before calving, cows really can get into negative energy balance due to, one, the calf is growing in size, and growing in size is going to be demanding a lot of energy. It's also going to put some pressure on the rumen, so reducing maybe the size of the rumen, so there is a reduction in the amount of feed which the animal can be able to take. Colostrum is also being produced towards the end of lactation, and therefore I expect that the production of colostrum is going to affect it is going to have an energy demand on the animals. So, and we also see that at this time there is the dry matter intake of the animal is going to go down. Therefore, if the demand for the milk is going to be down, then we do expect that this animal is not able to meet the needs of your animals. I hope I will be forgiven because of so much noise which is there. There is so much rain where I am at the moment, actually some serious hailstorm. So I will be able to, I'll try as much as possible to be very loud during this discussion so that you do not miss anything. So what we are trying to see here is the animals are not able to take sufficient feed during the dry period. There is a very high demand for the energy towards the end of the gestation period. The animal is approaching calving, and therefore there is a very high possibility that those cows which are fat, for example, are at the risk of trying to mobilize more fat so that it can be able to cover up for the high demand of energy which we are going to be experiencing. So as a farmer or as a veterinary practitioner, how are you going to identify negative energy balance? And I think at the beginning of lactation, you're going to note that your animals are going to be dropping their body condition scores. And there is a very high possibility that you're going to have a drop of between maybe a 0.5 to maybe a 1. So you're having your animals at 3.5 or 4. Then you're having them maybe coming to 3.5, coming to 3. Or, I mean, it's coming down by 1 unit. So animals are really getting thin because they are trying to mobilize as much butterfat from their adipose tissues as much as possible. At the beginning of milking, you're also going to see a reduction in milk production. Your animal maybe was doing 30 liters in the first week, and then you will start seeing that the milk production is beginning to drop. The other issue which can be evident is when you take your milk to maybe a dairy, they will be able to see that the ratio of the fat to protein is actually coming down, and most of the time we will see that it's coming down to below 1.5. And then another aspect which I know is very, very common with many farmers is the fact that they are going to be complaining about issues of fertility. So fertility, animals failing to come on it is actually one of the consequences of a negative energy balance. So you are seeing an animal which is getting very thin. It's going to develop many other problems which result into a poor production, the animal not coming on it and all that. And it is as a result of failing to avail adequate energy which your animal is requiring. So having talked about negative energy balance, it's important for me to look at how are we going to control this so that we can achieve more milk production and be able even to get to a peak production and get as much milk as possible during that lactation. And I'll take you back to some of the discussions which we had previously. And I think in my fourth and fifth discussion, where we were talking about dry cow management, and I also talked about milk fever, it's important for you to get back to some of those discussions which we had before. Because if you are going to have a very poor dry cow management, then expect trouble. You are not going to achieve a lot of milk. So you need to have a very successful dry period. And during that dry period, there are some things which I was able to highlight. One of them was you need to maintain adequate rumen feed. And there were aspects which you were looking at during that time. One was so that the rumen is full and it is not going to be displaced by the uterus which is filling up with the calf. The calf is growing and the uterus is getting big, and the organ which is going to be reduced in size is actually the rumen. So you want to maintain a good rumen fill so that you do not, so that once the rumen is full, then it's going to have a more capacity to take in more feed. The other thing which we looked at was you need to ensure that you watch your body condition scores. You are not supposed to have your cows getting thin. You are not supposed to have your cows over conditioning. So you want to really watch the energy content of your diet during the dry period. Because the cows which are going to have a lot of trouble after calving are actually the ones which you are fed too much energy during the dry period. You also want to ensure that those cows get sufficient comfort, they are staying well. You want to check that the environment is very clean so that your transition cows are not going to develop lameness. Because those are some of the things which are going to predispose the cows to very serious negative energy balance, leading to a reduction in milk production. The other thing which I highlighted, I think in my last week's discussion, was managing milk fever. And I think you want to do everything which I said to prevent milk fever, because subclinical hypocalcemia or milk fever is going to predispose your cow to so many problems after calving. Of course, the first one is going to be a reduction. Of course, when you have a low calcium levels in the body, then the animal is going to be weak. It's going to be slow with feeding. The ruminations are going to go down. So you expect that cow not to take in sufficient amount of dry matter. And if that happens right before calving and right after calving, then you're already in trouble, my friend, because a depressed dry matter intake is going to force the animal to see how it's able to mobilize fat reserves from its body, and as a result of that, then you expect trouble, because if you are going to have too much mobilization of fat, then the liver is going to be compromised, so metabolism of energy is going to go down, and your demand for energy is still very high, so your animals get into negative energy balance, and I don't expect you to really get a lot of milk from those cows. So we are actually looking at a problem which, if you take care of your cows during the dry period very well, managing milk fever, feeding your cows quite well, then I expect you to really get good amounts of milk in the next lactation. Then the other thing which I want you to be really very keen at is I want you to maintain, to ensure that you achieve a very high dry matter intake by your cow. You want to ensure that your cow is really feeding, and you want to increase. I talked about transitioning cows. In the last 2 weeks before calving, you want to start feeding your cows feed which are almost similar to what you feed to your lactating cow. So you want to start training the rumen so that it can be able to adopt to the new diet which your cow is going to be receiving right after calving. So the first thing you want to avoid is giving your cow something which it's not familiar with, because that is going to limit dry matter intake. You also want to provide a good source of fiber to your cows, something which is very palatable and really very dense in energy and other nutrients like protein towards calving and also after calving. You want to walk around where your cows are going to be, and you will be watching for some things which are going to be pointing towards you having the trouble of negative energy balance. So if you are going to go to where your cows are and the troughs are empty, for example, the feed which is in the trough, when you smell it, it's not smelling nice. It's not looking good. I mean, it's something which you also don't like it. The cows will definitely not be able to feed so much of that. And if that happens, then we are already having dry matter intake depression, and that is going to force your cow into negative energy balance, which we know, if there is going to be a low supply of energy, then your production is going to drop straight away. The other thing which I want you to be very keen is get some good fodder for your cows. Very good grass, very good alfalfa, or vital alpha, for example, a very good source of fiber which is going to help your rumen to really generate a lot of energy. Beetroot, sugar beet pulp, pellets like Vita Beta, for example, are going to be very good fodder which is highly digestible, and I expect you to really get sufficient amount of energy and also some support on the rumen so that your cow can be able to meet the energy demand, and it is going to produce much more milk because it's not going to suffer a lot from the consequences of negative energy balance. I already talked about cow comfort during the last 2 weeks and also after calving. So you want animals to be very comfortable. You want them to get a good place to lie down. You want them to stay in a very clean environment where their feet are not going to get dirty, where it's not going to be predisposed to diseases which are going to make them to get lame and all that. So I want you to really be very keen with some of those factors. The fifth thing which you are going to pay attention to is what we've been talking about as rumen health or rumen function. I already had a discussion before concerning the importance of the rumen to a ruminant. And we already said that if you are going to have a consistent environment, a consistent diet, a consistent pH in that rumen, then the rumen microbial organisms are going to have a very good environment where they are going to multiply, and they will be in a position to break down the forages which you are feeding to your cows to generate as much energy and protein as to meet the demands during lactation as much as possible. So rumen health is actually very key. And what are you going to be doing? You want to ensure that the forages which you are feeding to your cows are highly palatable, and there is sufficient roughage. You want to also ensure that you reduce the amount of concentrate. So you want to have, if you're considering the ratio of your forages to concentrates, I need more forages during this time. Of course, that's a challenge, because if you are feeding bad feed, then of course that's going to limit the energy output from that feed from your cow. So you want to get the best forages, which are going to be much more than the concentrates, so that the rumen function is going to support your cow with energy and protein by, I mean, if you have sufficient more roughages than concentrates, then I expect that ruminations, saliva production and all that is going to be much higher. So your cow is going to have a rumen pH which favors the rumen microbial organisms to produce much more energy and protein. So if you feed too much concentrates at this point, your animals are likely to go into acidosis, and that is going to spoil the rumen function, and you're now going to get into more trouble, because if the rumen is not functioning, then how are you going to have enough energy, enough protein to sustain the milk production which you are having? So everything on your side is actually going to be on the negative. So having talked about what you are going to be feeding your cow, the other issue which you want to watch is ensuring that your cows are not going to be sorting their feed. So for those people who really believes in total mixed rations, do you have equipment which are going to sustain, which are going to ensure that mixing feed is going to be optimal and animals are not going to sort? If you are not in that position, then I don't know what you are going to do to ensure that there is a very good mix of feed, so that your animals are not going to do what we usually call slack feeding. They are not going to pick out the sweet things, the concentrates, maybe some silage, and leave out maybe a good part of the diet, which is of course the forages. Because if they do that, then your cow is going to suffer from what we call subacute ruminoacidosis, SARA, and that is even going to make things very worse. The sixth thing which I want you to watch to avoid negative energy balance is you need to learn how to evaluate the body condition scores of your cows. And in this case, maybe a quick way of making you to know something about it is, in a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is very thin and 5 is very fat, where when you evaluate your cow, where does it fall into? Because what we are watching to ensure that we get more milk is avoiding cows losing their body condition scores. So if we expect your animal to calve down in anything between 3.0 and 3.5, then if they come down below 3, for example, if they come down to 2.5 from 3.5, that's already a 1 unit drop in body condition score. And that is a pointer. What you are going to be seeing here is you are seeing more bony prominences, and it is already telling you that your cow is mobilizing adipose tissue reserves. Much of that fat is going to the liver, and when we have too many non-esterified fatty acids filling into the liver, then your animal is going to suffer from what we call secondary ketosis, or even eventually ketosis, really, where now there is too much mobilization of fat and there is scarcity of glucose in the blood. So the animal is having too much ketone bodies being produced because the body is trying to generate as much energy to sustain the milk production from fats, and that really puts your animal into more trouble. So you want to evaluate that body condition score. The other thing which is going to be very critical is rumen fill. When you look at the left side of your cow, there is what we call the left paralamba fossa, the end of the short ribs and just ahead of the pelvis. That shimo, that kahole which you usually see there, I need it full. And you need to be evaluating that. You want to check whether the rumen is full. If it is not full, then it tells you that the dry matter intake of your cow is very low, and you need to do something about ensuring that your cow is going to feed in more feed. Because if that happens, then expect a serious drop in milk production, and you are not going to sustain high milk production during that time. Because failure of the cow to fill the rumen is telling you that it's not eating much, And if you are seeing a very empty rumen, it is actually telling you that your cow has not been able to feed maybe for more than 3 days. It has not been able to feed nicely in the last 3 days. And for those who have many cows, try to pick out as many cows as possible and look at their left side to see normal cows, how full are they, and then you can be able to pick out the one which is not feeding very well. So rumen feel is actually very critical. Then now, the seventh one which I want you to check is actually the feed quality. There are some things which you can be able to assess by use of common sense. For example, if you are having moldy feed, you can be able to smell it. You can be able to see the mold forming. Why are you having that kind of feed for your cow? Because that straight away is going to make the cows not to eat much. And if it's not going to eat much, then you expect negative energy balance, and therefore your milk production is going to be depressed. You are not going to achieve a good pick from your cows. How about the quality of your forages? Are you chopping hay to your cows which is over mature? Can't you see the seed which is already in your hay? Can't you see the stalks? If it's Napier grass, for example, how much of that stem are you seeing in the forages? How much is the cow looking at? You also want to feel the feed. Is your feed maybe getting warm, or is it heating up? That's already a pointer which is telling you that the cows are going to dislike the feed because it's already beginning to decompose. How clean is the trough, for example? I go to farms often, and you find guys are been topping up fresh food without removing the leftovers. And when you think about it, even you as a person, can you really take some leftovers from somebody else? And how do you expect a cow which is so good at smelling and tasting more than you to be able to eat some feed which remained the previous day? And that is really compromising the ability of your animal to take in a lot of feed. And in the end, you really do not expect your cow to really achieve a high milk production. Then the last one, which I know I have talked about, maybe this should be the third or the fourth time since we started this series of Facebook Live trainings. Change in what you are feeding to your cows, or any change. Cows really dislike change. So if you are going to change, for example, the components of your ration, you are bringing in something which is new to your cows. And there are two things which are going to happen. Either the cow is going not to like what you are bringing in, or number two, which is more serious, is the fact that the ruminomicrobial organisms adopt to the feed which you are feeding to the cow. They are able to adopt, they are able to mutate to produce enzymes which are able to break down what you've been feeding those cows. So if you are going to introduce a new substrate which they are unfamiliar with, the bacteria which has been digesting that are going to be suffering from starvation. They are going to die, and once they die, of course, you are not going to have generation of sufficient levels of volatile fatty acids to supply in more energy for your cow. And it's going to take you so long before the bacteria are going to multiply and adopt to a new diet. So the first thing you want to avoid is actually change in what you've been feeding to your cow. So you want to avoid that. And the reason why I'm talking about change is why we've been really insisting on having a transition diet. What we were saying, you need to think about what you are going to be feeding to your cow after calving. Then start feeding that from in the last 4 weeks towards calving. Start adjusting that feed, increasing in amount until the time the animal is going to calve down, and that is what it shall continue to feed on as lactation progresses. So if you are going to do that, of course, then the microbial organisms will have adopted very well to that diet, and the rumen is functioning quite well, and you are able to generate as much energy and protein and amino acids and vitamins and everything else which is going to be coming out of the rumen to maximize milk production. You also want to ensure that palatability of your feed is not changed. So if you've been putting molasses, for example, I don't expect you to stop that. You want to continue putting in that into your diet so that your animals are not going to eat something which they are not familiar with. Because Anything which is going to be unpalatable is going to minimize the dry matter intake, and that straight away will take your animal to negative energy balance, which we've already seen that it's going to lead to a reduction in milk production, disease incidences like ketosis, and of course, once you have ketosis, my friend, once you have a drop of more than one score of body condition, then you don't expect those cows to pick, and you don't expect those cows to come on it soon. So there is really so much which I expect you to be in a position to watch during this time so that you can be able to maximize milk production. So as we come to the end of our discussion today, I think I will be doing a lot of justice if we talk about the consequences of negative energy balance. And some of the things which I will be able to highlight are actually what you've been able to see as a farmer. And the first thing which I already talked about, if you are going to have cows which really have very good body condition scores during the dry period, if they are not able to take in as much feed, and we already know that the appetite of cows after calving is actually quite poor, then they are going to go into negative energy balance, and we are going to have mobilization of fat reserves from the adipose tissue. This fat is going to go into the liver, and there is a high possibility, especially for cows which were very fat before calving, body condition score 4, 4.5, going up. Those cows are the ones which you realize that 2 weeks, 3 weeks after calving, they are going to get very thin. And those cows are going to be having so many challenges because, one, if too much fat is mobilized, we know that cows are very weak in moving fat to the adipose tissue once it comes into the liver. So there will be a lot of that fat in the liver, and too much fat in the liver is going to compromise the function of the liver. So you get what we call fatty liver syndrome. And if the liver is not functioning, then it means that metabolism is compromised. Gluconeogenesis, so formation of glucose, is going to be poor. And then getting energy to sustain milk production from fatty acids will lead to production of a lot of ketone bodies, and your animal is actually going to go into ketosis. When you have ketosis, what you are going to be observing are cows which are off diet, they do not feel like eating. In fact, sometimes you can give some concentrates to those cows and they are not interested. You are going to have cows which are getting thin. If you are going to open their mouth, of course, you are going to get the smell of acetone coming out. And there is a reduction in milk production and all that, and so many other complications are going to come out of that. We know that cows at this time actually require to be fed quite well so that they do not get into issues. So if you already had some subclinical milk fever, the animal is having fatty liver syndrome, it is developing ketosis, then the immunity of that cow is actually going down. So there will be a lot of complications which are going to come out right after calving. And you will see that incidences of uterine infection, metritis, are going to be so common. You will see so much mastitis because if the somatic cell counts are actually getting high after calving, then your animal is really going to get into mastitis. Of course, there are many other complications, including the fact that the feet of the cow, I mean the hoof, if you are going to have a lot of fats being lost from the adipose tissue, then also the digital cushion which is on the animal's feet is going to be losing some fat, and these cows will likely come down with lameness, and it's going to complicate a lot of these other issues. So really, negative energy balance, beside leading to a drop in milk production, is going to predispose your cow to a lot of diseases, and your veterinary costs are going to really go up. And worst of it all, everyone is complaining about infertility. My cow is not coming on it. In fact, I've already seen a number of questions coming in, and the ones which we've been able to put together throughout the week. And a lot of people are complaining about, my cow has stayed too long before it came on it, or my cow is not conceiving. My friend, these are the consequences of negative energy balance. I already said that if the body condition of your cow is going to drop by 1 unit, if it's going to drop by 1 unit, then that cow is not likely to come on it even past 60 days. It might even stay to 120 days and much more, because negative energy balance is going to compromise on fertility of your cows. So we want you to pay attention to your cow which has recently calved and fill the rumen, my friend, with very good feed so that your animal is not going to get into ketosis. So it is all about feed. It is all about feed quality. It is all about how you kept your cows during the dry period. It is all about how much attention you are going to be paying to the cows which recently calved. Having said so much about negative energy balance, having said so much about how you're going to fill in your rumen with good feed so that you can have adequate energy, I think we can be able to go and to question and answer session, and I'm going to be addressing some of the questions which came through. And one of them was coming from a guy called Boniface, who said that my Frisian cow gave birth 3 weeks ago and can't even give me 2 liters of milk in the morning. I give dairy meal, Boma Roads, Napier grass. I have done deworming and even called in a vet who did some injections, but still no milk. What can be the problem? This is exactly what I've been trying to address all this time. Negative energy balance. Failure to feed good feed to your cows. So if you look at this cow, there is a high possibility that it was looking very good right before calving. It may have been overconditioned. And after calving, it went, we expect that cow not to really be eating so much food. So if the quality of your Napier grass and Boma Roads and dairy meal is actually poor, and it's not able to meet the energy demands for that cow, and the cow has depressed feed intake, then that cow went into negative energy balance. And it can only be able to produce the amount of milk which can be sustained by the energy which the cow is receiving. So we already know that for every extra liter of milk which is going to be produced, the animal requires some extra energy above the maintenance. So a cow which is producing 20 liters of milk is going to require much more energy than the one which is producing 10 liters, for example. So if the feed intake is compromised, if the quality is poor, then how do you expect that cow to produce much more milk? And at the 3rd week, my friend, if you look around, you will not miss some mastitis. You will not miss some uterine infection. You might see the cow has a very empty rumen. And you will always be having history of a very good looking cow before calving, which has gotten very thin at that time. So by the 3rd week, the animal has really gotten into ketosis at that time and many more trouble. And I don't expect that cow to really give you more milk. Nicholas Kigen in Eldoret is asking, my cow just calved recently, a week ago. It is producing 18 liters instead of the 25 liters which I was told it was producing when I was buying. I want to know the type and ratio of food to use to improve milk production. This cow has a potential of doing 25 liters. Now it's producing 18 liters. What could be the problem? And I can tell you for free that there is a high possibility that the quality of your forages has gone down. The energy supply from the forages or the concentrates which you are giving are not able to sustain a 25 liter production. And this is why it's doing less milk. And if you're going to improve the fodder diet, the fodder component of your diet, looking at the quality and all that, I expect that milk production to go up. You're not doing so badly at 18 liters. And if you put in more energy to meet the extra milk which the cow wants to produce, then your milk production is definitely going to go up. Maria Wanjiku is asking, my cow calved recently but got very thin later and is now producing so little. What could be the issue and how do I correct? So Maria, you should be able to get some energy dense feed at the moment so that you can at least restore some of the energy supply to your cow. And next time you need to start paying attention to the last 4 weeks before calving. You want to take care of your dry cow quite well. I already handled some of such discussions in my previous live broadcasts, and I think you should be able to get back to them and look at how do we take care of a dry cow so that it doesn't give you a lot of trouble and lead to a drop in milk production after calving. I can see Francis Nalianya on our page, and you're saying which product do you offer to work on that from Vital. And I think, Buana Francis, we have alfalfa pellets, which we call Vital Alpha. We also have sugar beet pulp, which we call pellets, which we call Vital Beta. And I expect that if you are going to buy that, you're going to improve the forage component of your diet. And of course, I know that the digestibility of the two is quite good, and it's going to enable your cow to at least restore some of the energy which it requires. And that way, you will be able to help cows which have recently calved to sustain a high milk production. Of course, when we talk about sustaining a high milk production, I know my focus today has been so much on energy, but it's important for you to know that there are very many components of a diet, and the first one, of course, is energy. The second one is protein. You need to meet the energy and the protein demand for your cow. The third one is, of course, water, which everyone usually forgets. You need clean water for your cow so that it can be able to help in the rumen function as well as meeting the water demand of your cow. Of course, we know milk is more than 87% water. So of course, if your cow is going to lack water, then you expect your cow not to produce much milk. Last but not least is, of course, minerals and vitamins. So of course, you need to buy Vital Maziwa for your cow which is milking, so that you can be able to get the high phosphorus which it's supplying for energy purposes, sufficient levels of copper, vitamin B12, iodine, and all that. Anything which is associated with metabolism, you're going to get it, so that your cow is able to meet the metabolic demand for mineral elements, which of course we know when you have adequate levels of mineral elements, then the enzymes which are involved in energy metabolisms are going to be met, and therefore your cow is going to be operating at optimum. You also need animal comfort and all that. So there are many other things which you want to do to enable your cow to produce much more milk. So I'm going to answer the last question, and then we come to the end of the discussion. And this is from Dominic Choge, who is saying, how can I boost my cow to come on eat after calving? Choge, I already said that if your cow gets into negative energy balance, my friend, and it develops some degree of ketosis, if it's going to get thin from a body condition score of 3.5 to 2, then your cow is not going to come on eat. It is going to take 3 months, 4 months, even the whole year before coming on eat. So how are you going to manage that? You want to begin from the dry period. Feed your cow during the dry period very well. Ensure your cows are not going to have milk fever. Ensure that your feed is highly palatable. You want to maximize dry matter intake. So that way, the energy demand to some level is going to be achieved. Your animal is not going to suffer a lot from negative energy balance. And if your cow is not able to lose more than 0.5 of body condition score, I expect that cow to come on it even before it's 40 days. So, and thin cows never come on it, for your information. So keep your cows healthy. Have your cows getting sufficient energy from the diet, and your cows are going to come on it soonest. So if you're going to have your cows being above 2.275, I expect those cows to come on it, and they're going to produce much more milk. Samuel Cheronge, you will be the last guy I'm going to answer your question. How do I boost my milk production? Back to the same thing. For you to produce milk, you need energy. And you need so much energy. Actually, if I make some references, I'm trying to remember how much energy is required for every liter of milk you produce. And I think it is anything like 0.73 megajoules. I am not remembering it quite well. So you need to meet the energy for maintenance. Then for every liter you produce, there is an amount of energy which you require. And there is no way, if you're only providing energy for maintenance, that cow is going to go off milk. It's not going to produce milk. So to produce more milk, you need to provide good quality forages and concentrates, good quality minerals, quality water, and your cow is going to boost. There is nothing like milk booster, my friend. It is all about feed. It's about providing everything which is required for your cow to produce much more milk. And milk is actually driven by meeting the protein demand and the energy demand for the animals. Once the animal goes into positive energy balance, then I expect that cow to produce much more milk and also to come on eat adequately. So I have come to the end of my live presentation today. I would want to inform you that next week again at 3 p.m. we are going to have another discussion. We will still be maintaining our discussion on how to improve milk production. And next week we will be looking at adult and I think aspects of milk quality, of course, to attain a higher milk production. So join me again next week on Friday at 3 p.m. so that we can be able to continue with the discussion again. I can see a guy calling himself Rivlin. He's staying tuned. I think I know his real name. He's called Enoch. So keep on sharing, keep on discussing. We will be able to save the video and you can be able to host some watch parties with your friends. And we want more engagements, we want more questions so that we can be able to have a very lively discussion. So I want to take this opportunity to wish you a great weekend. Of course, COVID-19 is still a big challenge and we want you to continue sanitizing, keeping distance, and following what the government is saying. There is a high chance of catching COVID-19 now than it has ever been before. And I want healthy farmers so that we can be able to keep the country running and being economically sound. Have a nice weekend. God bless you.